But now I hear on the right hook, I'm delighted to welcome to the programme the Fianna Fáil's Shannon spokesperson on education, Averil Power. Senator Power, welcome to the programme.
Thanks, George.
Now, you'd be a great kind of equality woman, I would imagine. You'd be strong on equality, but yet, gender quotas. I mean, gender quotas are not remotely about equality, isn't that so?
Well, gender quotas are about choice. We're not bringing the legislation that's coming in for the next general election isn't reserved seats for women, which is a position they have in some other countries like France and elsewhere. They actually save a certain proportion of seats in Parliament for women. The quotas that are coming in are actually just an instruction to parties to give the voters a choice that at least when you walk into a polling station at the next general election, if there's 10 names in the ballot paper, at least 3 of those will be female. So you won't be just be giving an all-male slate. And the research actually shows that women, when they do get on the ticket, when they stand as candidates, have just as strong a chance of getting elected as men. There's also been research done by MRBI and others that shows that voters want that choice. That the electorate, a lot of voters are frustrated by the fact that they're just constantly given only a selection of men, that they're not actually, like some constituencies last general election, you had all male list, you had not a single woman on the ballot paper. And I don't think that's representative. And I take your point. Look, in an ideal world, I'd prefer not to have quotas. I'd love to have a situation where they're not needed. I propose, when the legislation was brought forward in the Shannon, I proposed a sunset clause that as soon as you actually had a sufficient number, you had 30% of women elected and held that for 5 years in the next election, that you get rid of the quotas. But I think we need to have strong measures that are put place to change that culture.
Right. Aren't quotas essentially a confession of failure? A quota is a confession of failure that either, A, not enough women are actually interested in going forward for politics for whatever reason. And then the second one is that leaders like Enda Kenny and your Micheál Martin and so on have not either encouraged women to go forward.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is they currently have 85% of the Dáil is male. I think it's 84 now. It's 16% female, which is the best ever. But it's at the same figure for the last 20 years as the highest we've ever had. In 1992, you had a record number of women elected. It stayed exactly the same since then. If the system was working, you wouldn't need quotas. But the reality is the system isn't working.
Do the British have quotas?
Otherwise. No, but their representation wouldn't be any better than ours.
Not any better?
No, it's just as bad.
Despite Blair's babes and all these famous kind of headlines that we were reading about.
Some change at the time when Blair had a strong strategy of picking more female candidates. There were more women picked by the Labour Party for that reason, but traditionally their performance would be very poor. The US would be very poor. But you look at a World League table, right, of women in Parliament, and Ireland is like 140 or something like that. We're below Rwanda, we're below countries in the Middle East. That's not a league that you want to be in.
Okay, but one of the things I would suspect you would sort of fight for and would be close to your heart. I don't know, but I'm going to ask. Okay. Like, you would probably be in favour of better maternity leave for women. Mm-hmm. You would probably be in favour of better childminding facilities and all those things. Yeah. Aren't they more at the root of why we have less women in politics than necessarily that, there's a bunch of old fellas in a room somewhere trying to keep women down?
I think it's a mixture of both. And actually, when you think about why is better female representation important, right? And one of the reasons is that at present, if you look back on cuts where they've been made over the last 2 years, right? And you mentioned maternity benefit. Maternity benefit has been hammered over the last 2 years, right? Same with pensions for older women who took time out to care for their families years ago and they lost pensionable service credits, PRSI credits as a result. Their pensions have been cut at a point in their lives when they can't go back to work and make up the difference, right? Those decisions were made by politicians who were, in the most part, were male. And I think you see that if you look at the fact with Brendan Howlin...
You think you get a different decision if you're women?
I think people, if they had better personal experience, like Brendan Howlin this week, this revelation that childcare is expensive. I mean, really? You look at the other countries where they've had...
But he can't be
better,
serious.
But that's what he said. He's just realised we've one of the most expensive childcare. I mean, I think we would have fished that issue 20 years ago. You look at Sweden, you look at France, you look at other countries, and childcare was an issue that they tackled 20 years ago and they put proper systems in place, right? So I get that childcare childcare is an issue, and also like the unsociable working hours in the doll, things like that. But in many respects, they'll only change when you have...
Isn't politics anti-female, anti-family?
Yeah. And the problem is, I think the only way that will change is when you have enough people in the room that are affected by it. Now, crucially, there are some younger male TDs now that have kids that equally find it ridiculous that we decide at the last minute to sit till 11, 12 o'clock, sometimes the middle of the night at a couple of hours' notice, right? Which is not just an issue about family friendliness, it's bad policy making, it's bad decision making. Nobody can make decisions at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right, but on the other hand, Dan, like if you were a man and you were a teacher in, say, primary schools, you might be looking for gender quotas in primary schools. Where does gender quotas start and finish?
I think politics, because politicians make decisions that affect everybody, I think it's really, really important that the people that are making those decisions are representative, right? Now, we all try to represent everybody, or represent not just women, but also men. But a lot of the issues that you champion come from your own personal experience, just as on this show, when you're talking about issues, the ones that are closer to your heart are the ones that you've had experience with, right? So we all bring that to the table. And that's why it's important that you have, like, still... men and women now lead increasingly similar lives, right? We're all worried about jobs and pensions and housing and health and things like that. But still, the vast majority of the people in this country are full-time carers, whether it's for kids or for elderly parents or disabled relatives, are women. And again, when those decisions that have been made about cutting those payments have been made, they've been made mainly by people who aren't affected by them. And I do think that's an issue. But I mean, the main thing I think is important with the quota system that's coming in is that the electorate will have a choice. They should still vote for the best man or woman on that ticket. I don't want anybody to vote for me just because I'm female, and they won't.
But if you go back to Fianna Fáil, hypothetical question, Fianna Fáil and some hypothetical constituency, in 1950, Eamon de Valera and Sean Lamass are going to go on ticket, but they say, sorry, no, one of you has to go because Mary Murphy here has to go on the ticket. Isn't the issue of positive discrimination? I saw this in South Africa, for instance, after the fall of apartheid. Aren't there difficulties associated with positive discrimination anyway, in principle?
I mean, I think in politics there are always a variety of reasons why people get in the ticket. Lots of very, very good people have been held back in this country because they didn't have the right surname, because the parties just ran the son or daughter of the previous TD, or because they weren't geographically based in the right place, because the party wanted a candidate from the north of the county and you were in the south, and you could be the best potential candidate in the entire country, but you're still not running because they want someone from a particular geographical location where they think that.
So you're saying it's a pretty unfair place.
I think political selection in and of itself, it's not perfect, and it's not always fair.
Right.
On the point that you made about positive discrimination, I think sometimes there's a difference between being equal and being fair. When people are starting from behind, to get to fairness, you have to give some groups a lift. So we would never argue. I was a student union officer as president of the Students' Union in Trinity in a previous life. I did a lot of work with our access programme there, right? So we had an access programme that took students in from disadvantaged areas with really low levels of education on lower points, and they right across the board, right, scored better once they actually got into Trinity. It's the same across the other colleges. They actually get higher degrees. So maybe they come in with 100 less CO points. They don't do as well in the Leaving Cert, but they get a higher proportion of 2 1s and firsts because it means more to them. They work harder for it. So you would say equal would be, no, you wouldn't have an access programme. Everybody, you have to get the 450 points and that's it. But fairness is accepting that some people are starting from behind, that they're just as capable, and the reason that they don't get the points isn't because they're not as smart. It's just because, of geography. And I think in politics, our biggest issue is there's a culture that it's seen as a male-dominated profession, and that becomes self-enforcing. Young girls looking at a picture of our cabinet think that's a job for my brother. They don't think that's something that she could do, and we need to change that. And over time, quotas will be completely irrelevant. They'll be redundant.
All right. Okay. There'll be a female head of Fianna Fáil. Yeah,
then the quota legislation actually says you have to have 30% female and 30% male. So maybe someday it'll work the other way around.
Now, there's great excitement around the country on Simon Coveney's remarks about coalition. The reality of it is that whatever happens, but for the duration of this dole, there's going to be no serious talk, isn't that right? It's all going to be after an election. So unless the coalition as a talking point is irrelevant, unless you've numbers to make it possible. Isn't that right?
Absolutely, and I think it's a huge distraction. I mean, I was listening to Simon earlier, delighted he has so much time for Micheál Martin and for the Fianna Fáil team that he has such admiration for us. But honestly, I think people listening at home are saying we're 16 months away from an election. We have serious issues in this country. We have people languishing in Beaumont Hospital, not even on trolleys, just sitting in chairs because they can't get a trolley. We have a housing crisis. We have people dying on the streets because they can't get a home. I mean, I think the vast majority of Simon Coveney's constituents and other people, residents across the country, would prefer if the government got on with doing its current job rather than worrying about its next one.
Yeah, but like different people, like Jerry Buttimer, his own constituency colleague, disagrees with him. Like whether it's Fianna Fáil or Fine Gael, there will be people within those parties who will have widely divergent views. I presume you have a view.
I do have a view.
And what's your view?
My view is I wouldn't buy into, some people think the Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael are very similar. I don't accept that. I actually think there's a big difference between the two parties, and it's nothing to do with I couldn't care less about the Civil War or what side anybody's grandparents were on. But I think that Fine Gael are only concerned about very well-off people in society. You've seen that in their budgets. Each of their budgets over the last few years has been adjudicated by the ERSRI and other independent bodies as being unfair. They've most benefited people at the higher end and least those who can actually, they've hit people the hardest who can least afford it. And I think that's a difference. We put forward alternative budgets that would have taken a different approach to reach the same overall result.
No, most of but isn't it fair to say all your really good budgets were all proposals when you were in opposition as opposed to when you were in power? I won't remind you about some of your budgets in the past. I
don't think that's fair. I mean, we can talk, and I've always been very open since I elected about where we went wrong in the past. But if you look back on things like we were talking about access to education there, that whole area has changed dramatically. You look at it last week, I'm the education spokesperson, so I like to talk about education. But last week we had literacy results out, where our literacy results are improved. That's not because of anything that's been done in the last 2 years, because investment we put in 10 years ago. The same with infrastructure, with the cancer strategy. I mean, there are lots of positive things that happened as well. But no, I think the point in the budget is crucial because our next election should be, we're getting into a lot of stuff about policy, personalities and parties. It needs to be about the issues, and it needs to be about where we're going as a country and what are our priorities, and that's why in our budget submission, we made, somewhat bold decision of saying that we didn't actually promise to reduce income tax because we want mental health services. We want people not to be afraid to get sick. We want them not to be afraid their special needs child won't get the support they need.
But here, you and I are talking about this, and I absolutely agree it's a distraction. We're here and we're talking about all this thing. 60 months out from an election in which it is absolutely certain that you're not going to have a coalition pact before the election. So therefore you're going to do what politicians have done as long as I've been following politics, which is now 60 odd years. The people have spoken and their numbers are, and then, so as Shane Coleman around 4:30 was talking about, well, if Fianna Fáil had 43 seats and Fine Gael had 45 seats or whatever, the numbers would say, unless we have another election, then the people have asked us to get together. Isn't that so?
Yeah, and I think there would be a certain amount of arrogance in setting out what your ideal of who, I've called it when people haven't cast a single ballot yet. Yeah. Fianna Fáil's heading into this election. We're going to campaign on the basis of our own platform, our own policies. I mean, my cut-off point for coalition options afterwards would be that we should only go into coalition if we're comfortable that our policies will be implemented. But I don't want to see us doing what the Labour Party have done, which is they've compromised on every single one of their principles.
But you'll compromise too. That's what politics is about, though. Politics is about compromise. But just the women, it suddenly struck me. It suddenly struck me. Mary Coughlin coming back in Donegal. You have a really smart person like Kate Feeney out there in Dunleary, and next minute she's going to get dumped apparently because the old war horse is Mary Hanafin is pawing the ground ready to go. Now the facts of the matter are that isn't it. Mary Hanafin to get elected in Dunleary down. So as far as Fianna Fáil to be concerned, like any smart party, or Mary Coughlin get elected in Donegal, I would think, like any smart party, you put up people who can win. Isn't that right?
Well, I mean, I think that's your home constituency, is it?
I'm an expert. Yeah.
So I think you're more of an expert than me. I've heard different analysis there. Look, I mean, ultimately, I think we've a good position. Dunleary will be 3 women fighting for the nominations.
Yes,
actually, that's a good place to be. Yeah. But ultimately, it's going to be up to the members to decide who the candidate is.
But it is.
Of course, you're going to be looking for somebody to get elected. You're also going to be looking, though, at a national level of making sure that you have the right team, that you have a team who are going to be a good, strong front bench, that you have the expertise. You're not just going to be looking at who's where.
In a way, this kind of puts you slightly in a corner. I don't mean to do it. I really don't. But the thing is that you have to get new Fianna Fáil. It's not a fair comment. I mean, you've already said, mistakes were made in the past. So it's quite important, I would think, to kind of go to an electorate and say, listen, you can't keep hitting us over the head every week about the past. You got to look at us. Yeah. We weren't there or whatever. Do you think there's an issue for candidates like the 2 Marys who would have been part of the old regime? Do you think that's an issue or not?
I think it's a mix. I think at the local level they probably still have a large amount of support, people who would stood by them even at the last election. I think on a global level the party needs to be putting forward a mix of experienced people and new candidates. We need to make sure that you have new faces breaking through, that you have diverse ideas, fresh approach and things like that as well. I think we have enough space for that actually, as it happens, because we only have TDs in half the constituencies in the country. So we have 20 constituencies at present where we don't have a sitting TD. So you are going to see, I think Fianna Fáil's ticket next time will be an interesting and exciting one, because the government parties will largely just be running the people that they have there at the minute, because they're trying to protect the seats that they have. We have so many fantastic young candidates that broke through in the local elections.
I mean, you've never in your history You've never been in this position. No. If you go back to 1930-odd when De Valera first started the whole thing, you always had either there were fellas shooters released from Kilmainham, or then, there was the old guys, the old guard like Aiken and Lamass and all these guys. Then it came into Cowan and Ahern and all these guys. This time, there are going to be names on Fianna Fáil ballot papers that we actually don't know. Yeah. That's going to be very interesting.
Which is interesting, and it's exciting. And from you're talking about, say, how we're going to run enough female candidates. There are so many amazing women across this country who are running their own businesses, who are community activists, who are doing, have all the skills and experience that we need in Leinster House, who traditionally in the past would have been held back by the two biggest parties, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, because there'd be a sitting TD there and he'd look at you and say, she's too good. And if you're any good, they'd find a man who wasn't quite as good and be very enthusiastically promoting him within the party and saying, no, he should be my running mate, not her. Whereas this time we have gaps. And I think that for that reason, we will be putting forward a really top-class group of candidates, as well as good policies in the next general election. And it's on those that the electorate will judge us. And after that, we can talk about coalitions and other options after the actual election.
And I'm looking forward to it. It's actually, the elections are always great fun in this country. All my best information comes from taxi drivers, and my taxi drivers today, and they're out in the streets protesting. But my taxi driver today told me, the economy is bouncing, he's making money, and the second thing he said is the best thing that ever happened was the abandonment of e-voting, because he loves waiting 3 days to get the results. So
when you're stuck in the car all day listening to the radio, you're like hearing the results come in.
So you and I'll be talking about that. Senator Averil Power, Fianna Fáil Shannon spokesperson on education and skills, coming up.